Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but it rejoices with the truth. It always protects. It always trusts. It always hopes. Always perseveres. Love never fails. Now these three remain: faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love. Healthy marriages start with vows. Now, it can be like intricate vows led by a pastor. It could be a simple I do before a court official. The vows, as we have them, are not straight from the Bible. And so a lot of people have paraphrased them and made their own up for their weddings. Yet vows reflect God's word, with no passage better known than this love poem of 1 Corinthians chapter 13. So welcome to our marriage series, Till Death Do Us Part, which doesn't exactly sound that exciting if we think about that. But looking at the essence of wedding vows, and I'm glad to share this message here at the Omaha campus and get to be via streaming to the Fremont campus, to the North Platte campus, and also to the place where Sandy and I call home now, the Millard campus. And so glad that you're able to be on board with us here today. I am married to Sandy. We've been a part of Stonebridge for coming up on 20 years. That's how you can round it when you're as old as I am. You know, hey, about 20 years, somewhere around there. But 2025 is a milestone year for us. And this summer has been absolutely amazing. We are celebrating 50 years of marriage. Yeah. And it's a lot different than when we got married and we honeymooned with our Ford Pinto, 71 Ford Pinto, and we went to the great honeymoon capital of Tulsa, Oklahoma. So amazing. Yes. Well, all I can say is that on our 50th anniversary year, we're not just like in our family, we do birthday weeks, we don't do birthdays. And so we figured for a 50th anniversary, it is 50th anniversary year. Okay, we're doing the whole year. And so this summer, we took one of our big steps of celebration that we'd talked about for a long time, and that was to take a train vacation. And so we got on the train here in Omaha, went to Chicago, spent a night in a nice downtown hotel in Chicago, then zipping down to the northern part of the country to the Glacier National Park, and then from Glacier to Seattle, and then Seattle back to here eventually. And so that was our deal. And so our Pinto got replaced by a 1933 red bus at Glacier National Park. And it's ironic to me to think that that vehicle is actually 40 years older than the car that we took on our honeymoon. And I can guarantee you that car that we took on our honeymoon is not around anymore. I can guarantee you of that. But it is so amazing. And I'm hoping that that kind of made up for that whiff on the honeymoon for Sandy. We have moments of looking back to two very different people. Our wedding picture, I'm thinking they let kids get married back in those days. I don't know what that's about. And then by our 10th anniversary, we had 4 kids. Now, the one thing that we didn't think about was how bad it is to be outnumbered by your kids. And it was a lot of work. And then by the time we got to our 20th anniversary, we had teens. And we discovered that teens love to stay up and they'll talk about serious stuff on your bed way after your own bedtime. 30 years, and we were going to a wedding of one of our nieces, a destination wedding. And as we were milling around with the wedding party, not just the wedding party, but the guests, we discovered, people said, we don't know anybody who's been married for 30 years, which felt a little sobering. And then at 40, we had been well on our road to making memories with our grandkids. Yes, that's just the deal. That was the center of our life. And now at 50, we eat breakfast in our pajamas. And before we get up from the table, Sandy usually shares off of her phone with us the Pickles comic. Now, if you're not familiar with Pickles, you basically have to be retired to really enjoy it. That's all I can tell you. It's designed for old people. But we have a lot of laughs In this milestone year, we're so thrilled to have made it. And in the words of our wedding vows, for better or for worse, this past summer and this year has been better than better. It is a celebration of the best part of our life. 30 years ago, Dr. Neil Clark Warren, in his research on relationships and compatibility in marriage, put together all of this work. And actually from his work, he eventually launched one of the early websites for dating called eHarmony. But in his compatibility thing, he said, it doesn't matter how much you have. Say you got 30 things on your list of things that you have to have the same as your potential spouse in order for you to have a great marriage. And he basically just says, I don't care what number you put on there, you don't even need half of them. I know it's a big disappointment to those that have made their special list for those that they might potentially marry. But he basically said compatibility is a little bit overrated. It's important, it's a good thing, but you don't have to have 100%. You can actually be like a major leaguer and bat .330 and be considered doing really well. And so he started that, but he really then hit on what he considered the most important aspect of longevity in marriage. And it was this: no marriage can be healthier than the emotional health of its least healthy partner. And so that doesn't mean then I get to point my finger at my spouse and say, you get it together. It means that we are in this together, and if I cannot be a strength to my partner, a strength to my spouse, then we're both in trouble. And I find that to be refreshing. Compatibility can only help so much. We need that personal, emotional health, spiritual health, and even in the areas of intellectual health where we can have things in common, but most important, together we must become more and more healthy in our lives. So, what's going to spotlight on us our emotional health? You know, you go to the dentist, they shine that big bright light in your eyes. I'm thinking it's my teeth that you're supposed to be looking at, I think. But man, I'm seeing spots. I finally quit wearing my glasses because it only magnified the light. I think, man, why am I so blind when I get out of here? But what puts that kind of light on the health of your relationship? Change. In fact, the vow that we have, for better or for worse, I believe is primarily helping us to realize that the big challenge in life is change. We've got to change for the better, we've got to change for the worse. And that puts a focus on the health of our individual self and our marriage. So change is going to be inevitable. I hate to tell you this. Life transitions happen, kids grow up, we can change. We don't we can rephrase it. We can have people write their own vows, and it doesn't say for better, for worse. We might say something more generic like, whatever comes our way. Because we don't want to say the word worse at a wedding. But the cool thing about it is that we're saying we will face any and every change, because change is inevitable. And so what kind of changes? Well, there's the unwanted ones, things like a bad review, not meeting expectations at work, grief, not enough money at the end of the month, paycheck has run out, illnesses, disabilities, parenting frustrations, disappointment of not being a parent, parenting woes and blaming the other person for all of the problems that our kids have. Aging then comes into play later. Some of our responses to this unwanted, painful change in our lives only makes it harder. What's your go-to one? Is it isolation? Is it denial? No problem here, nothing to see here. Blame, somebody else's problem, or just fear and just kind of hide our heads and just try to just time it out, just ignore it. Well, life happens. It piles up like dirty laundry. Eventually somebody's got to do that laundry, or else you have to throw it away and go buy some new stuff. Some days are simply not for better. They are for worse. And those days can easily end up becoming a week, and then a month, and pretty soon a year. And sometimes years pile on top of those years. And that leads us to that we might end up being at a spot in our life where we describe our marriage as loveless, or we're roommates, or business partners, or something else that is not that exciting and not really what we had given our vows to experience. And so I have a lot of bad habits in facing those kinds of challenges. We have a lot of things that can make it detrimental for us, and we end up unraveling our relationships because we hide from the realities that can be faced, the changes that we can actually face. And so this love poem of 1 Corinthians chapter 13 describes both healthy and unhealthy ways to face changes. Just look at it. Unhealthy, love is not. So these would be unhealthy things. Envy is unhealthy. Jealousy is unhealthy. Boastfulness, arrogance, dishonoring each other, self-seeking, being easily angered, keeping records of wrongs, and delighting when things go bad. Contrast that with a healthy love, which is patient and kind and honest and loves truth-telling. It always protects, it always trusts, it always hopes, it always perseveres. Those are the positives that we can have potentially expressed out of our lives. But the unhealthy can be our norm. And we can't just neglect it and live well. It will leave us unprepared for anything in the future that might be more difficult than what we're facing now. Marriage is a covenant. Promises given. And in the Bible, we have understandings about covenant. In the Old Testament, covenant basically means good owed for good received. Now that kind of sounds like, oh, I'm just doing good things because I get good things, but actually when you turn it into a reciprocal kind of wheel thing, it is like a perpetual motion machine. It is, I'm doing good for you and you're doing good for me, and then you do good for me, I do good for you, and we're really not keeping track, because love not only does it keep no record of wrongs, it doesn't keep a record of who's doing the most around here. Love is about a reciprocal, vow-based relationship. And so I want to just describe this vow that can be powered by love with 4 key principles. And it's like this. How do we face change? Romans 14, Paul wrote this. He said, none of us lives to ourselves alone, and none of us dies to ourselves alone. For if we live for the Lord. If we die for the Lord. That's the death do us part. And so what he's saying is that when we live out this vow, for better or for worse, it is, first admission is, I am not supposed to be alone. Now this is even pre-marriage. I shouldn't be trying to walk this earth without a relationship to God, my Creator. And he sent his Son to bring us to him. And so that gives us life. We know that Jesus gives us life, and Stonebridge is all about sharing that great message. And so I realize I'm not alone because in Christ, he is with me. That's a big part of it. Second focus is this. We, the 2 of us in our marriage, are not alone. Now, I want to make sure you understand what I'm saying. I know that we think, well, I've got you, you've got me, what's that Sonny and Cher song? Anyway, and yeah, I know. I've been married for 50 years, so you haven't heard it. We have each other, and we can face anything. And I want to suggest to you today that there's an aspect of marriage that is true. But I want to talk to you about this a little bit broader. The 2 of us in our marriage are not alone. God has given us a spiritual family, the church. We live in a community, reciprocally supported by the people around us. We're living moment by moment with fellow believers, and these fellow believers help us. And it makes us remember and realize that our marriage is bigger than the 2 of us. Our marriage is about being a part of a community. And so we need to realize that whatever it takes, we want to be able to experience the best in our marriage, and it's going to take people more than just the 2 of us. Ecclesiastes chapter 4, 9-12. I've used this passage when I've officiated weddings. Some couples really want to have this in their wedding, and it's a great passage. 2 are better than 1 because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. Also, if 2 lie down together, they will keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? Though one may be overpowered, 2 can defend themselves. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. Great passage, and it has a lot of oomph to it. But I want to share with you something here. And I've done it myself when I've officiated. I will say who's that 3rd cord? It's Jesus. Jesus is that 3rd cord that's going to hold your marriage together. And yes, But you know what? We kind of have a before the cross and resurrection view of Jesus at that point. We're thinking it's just Jesus and us. But it's actually not that, because what do we discover in 1 Corinthians chapter 14? What is Jesus' presence on the earth? What is his body on this earth? It is the church, is the body. And I want to suggest to you when it says a cord of 3 strands cannot quickly be broken, it's not talking merely about a spiritual connection to Jesus. It's talking about the presence of fellow believers in our life who help our cord of 2, our marriage, be stronger. And so it's perfectly important to realize that Christ is that cord through his church today. And so, principle 3 is we practice 2 key actions of Christian love. We kind of got a glimpse of that earlier, but the 2 actions are giving and forgiving, or generosity and forgiveness. Now, each spouse needs to have an assurance about the forgiveness of God, or it's going to be a little tough to navigate this. Not impossible, but tough. And then we know that we have forgiveness from each other. That's not like a blank check, but it's a process that we always work through, a process of forgiveness. We don't go blaming. We don't keep a record of wrongs. This is not a way that we say this is your problem, not my problem. As hard as it is to hear, we each must take some responsibility. And I also just want to remind you, it's important to realize that sometimes in our relationships, we find ourselves in a situation that doesn't feel totally safe. And we need to make sure that we are ensuring our own safety as we're trying to work through problems, because sometimes a marriage can be at that point. James wrote something about bitterness and about words. And I want to share this with you. Forgiveness is the antidote to bitterness, and bitterness is the death knell of a marriage. And I want to suggest to you that, again, this is not just about me and my spouse. This is about me and the rest of the world. And if I am bitter toward anybody, that bitterness is going to bleed into my relationship in my marriage. If I am unforgiving to my spouse, it's going to bleed into my unforgiveness toward other people in my life. This is a relationship issue that is broad, and we can't see our marriages as an island not affected by what's going on outside of our marriage. And we can be horrible to everybody else outside of our marriage and supposedly wonderful in our marriage. It is James that said in chapter 3, you can't have blessings and curses coming out of the same mouth. You can't have clear water and filthy water coming out of the same spring. It is a principle of God. And so I must not only work on forgiving my spouse at times, I need to make sure I'm keeping my relationships with everybody in a state of forgiveness and not bitterness. Number 4, faith, hope, and love are the bond of marriage. 1 Corinthians chapter 13. The health of our marriage is nurtured in trust, joyful confidence, and self-giving love. Faith, hope, and love. For better or for worse, Sandy and I had no idea actually what we were getting into. No idea. Honestly, we made those vows and we absolutely meant them and we absolutely wanted to live by them, but we couldn't see the seasons ahead. We had met in college. We had pretty quick courtship. People didn't even know that we were dating. We really found a commitment to each other because we were serving together in the community, and we just thought, this would be cool. We'll just do this the rest of our life. And so that's a little bit of an unusual track for marriages, I know, for weddings, but whatever. For us, it was our common ground that really just energized us. But we kind of hurried through life at the beginning. 6-month engagement, got married, started our family early. I had an intern-style type ministries when I was still in college, then off to the first church that we served full-time. There we discovered something that we did not expect. We found deep friends, a small group that cared for us. And it really made a huge difference in that early years of our marriage, and it was so wonderful. But then, after about 10 years at that church, I moved on to lead another church, quite a bit distance away. And that was a change in our life. And we just thought it was going to be fine. But what we discovered after about 15, 16 years of marriage was that we had not tended to the wear and tear in our marriage very well. And it was really beginning to grind. And we were saying, well, when we vowed for better for worse, we didn't really think this, but whatever. We'll probably be okay, We were hanging on to our tenacious faithfulness to each other, but we soon found ourselves faced with a choice. We're going to be married. We're either going to be married and miserable, or we can hope to be married and happy. And that kind of said, and that didn't really solve the problems. We just saw the problem. We just saw, here's the choice. But we still weren't doing very well because we had not built up the next relationships that we needed in our life for our support, for our marriage. We did not have the friendships. We did not have the small group experience that we needed. And I was a church leader, for crying out loud, but you know what? That's a whole different topic right there. Just suffice it to say that we were in a tough spot, but we were figuring, we'll do it somehow. We'll manage somehow. And it was in this season when 3 of our kids were teenagers that our eldest, a daughter, Yvonne, died as a result of a car accident after her first year of college. And the grief was overwhelming. In fact, we were far apart from each other. I was on a trip with a bunch of teenagers and other people in San Diego with 2 of our kids, and we were going into Mexico to build more homes. We do that from out of Stonebridge. And my wife, Sandy, and our youngest, was traveling in Oklahoma to see family. We were literally 1,400 miles apart, and our daughter was almost exactly in the middle. She died in New Mexico. It took us 2 days to even get our family all back together, and we were in the throes of acute grief. All I can say is that didn't go well. We had taken for granted that our marriage was going to be just fine, we'll just manage, and all of a sudden we were in the ditch, and we were in huge trouble. For me personally, my prolonged grief, my depression, my isolation continued for months and months. And it wasn't until Sandy's admonition to me, you better get your stuff together, or your other 3 kids are going to think that you didn't love them and you only loved your first child. Well, it woke me up, but it didn't really fix the problem. It just said, I got to do something different. And it was a very slow process. And I kind of drug her along with it too, because we decided, well, one of the things that we need is counseling. That wasn't a lot of fun, to tell you the truth. We had some really good things going on. We still read our Bibles every day. We still prayed every day. We did that together. But we were really seriously in trouble in our marriage. And a counselor that we had, which in retrospect we always said he didn't do us any good, although we made it to 50 years somehow. But the thing that he made us do early on was sit in his counseling room, look each other face to face, and look into each other's eyes. I did it for about 15 seconds the first time, because all I saw in Sandy's eyes was a magnification of my own grief, and I could not bear it. And it was the reminder that we sometimes think that people who go through a horrible thing, like a marriage that goes through a difficult challenge like that, you think, oh, at least they got each other. Oh yeah, they're both laying there in the ditch dying. They're no good to each other. And in fact, anybody who thinks your marriage is so strong that no matter what happens, you're always going to be able to be there for each other, it's not true. There can be things that are so overwhelming that you will not be able to help each other. It doesn't mean you're not going to make it. It just means you've got to have outside help. You need kind of like an EMT spiritually. You need an EMT and a counseling. And so that's what we discovered. And that's what I really want to share with you today, is that our marriages are only as strong as the friendships and the honest relationships that we have with people outside of our marriage, because we need each other. No 2 people can have a healthy marriage apart from being a healthy part of your community and your church family. Well, lots more things I could say. We did another round of counseling, actually went to a center for a week. It was big time intense, but guess what? Then it was like, oh, okay, this is maybe it's a good thing. So helped a little. I had a friend in the midst of all of my grief who saw I was in trouble. He volunteered a lot with me at church, and he gave me a book for Christmas. We didn't give each other gifts at Christmas. He gives me this book wrapped and everything, and I unwrap it, and it's a 265-day daily devotional book. And then he says, I got one for myself. We're going to read January 1, and then we're going to talk about it. Then we're going to do January 2. And I thought, oh my gosh, surely not. I just want to say, sometimes when we reach out, I needed George to reach out to me. He saw me crashing and burning. And he realized he was maybe one of the few people in my life that I might listen to, that I might just go along with what he suggested. And I can tell you to this day that he was an important part of the fact that Sandy and I made it to 50 years because he cared. And that's what we got to do. Two things. In your marriage, you have to look for people who are willing to help you and accept their help. And on the other side, when you see someone else struggling, to say a kind word, to write a note, to share a book, to give an encouragement to, and to just be with them. And so I want to ask you today, that's a lot to process, I know, but I want to ask you today, what's your next step in your relationships, in your marriage? Here we go. First of all, do I trust that God actually cares for me and for our marriage? If we know that God is the God that gave us 1 Corinthians 13, a God of love, we know that he cares about what we're going through. Second question I want to ask you is this. What kind of help do I need in order to become more honest with the people in my life? Because until I open up my heart, they cannot help me carry my burden. And that's actually, I need that more than I need advice. I just need somebody who will listen. And you do too. Third question for you is this. Who might I reach out to today that might be hurting so much that they are stuck until I at least say a kind word to them and an encouraging word? The success of our marriages, 50-year anniversary, has to do a whole lot more with the people in our life than it does with Sandy and I as a couple. And I'm so grateful that other people listened to God and reached out to us. And I want to say, if you want to make it till death do us part, you have to be able to face change, and you have to be able to let other people help you through those changes. Let's pray. Father in heaven, thank you so much for dear people that have helped us along the way. And Father, help us to have the courage to come out of our isolation, to be honest with at least somebody that cares about us, and to help us move forward and out of the despair and out of the disconnection and into your marvelous grace. Father, thank you so much for all that you do for us and in us and through us. In your Son, amen. So this has been a great service. Appreciated the music, loved just being here with you. Thank you for being here and being a part of it. We look forward to seeing you again very soon. Thanks for being here.